An elderly man spent his life savings on a piece of barren wasteland that everyone called cursed. The neighbors mocked him. His own family turned their backs on him. But beneath that dry, cracked earth lay a secret that would silence every doubter and rewrite his destiny forever. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. And please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Harold Whitmore was 73 years old when he made the decision that everyone thought proved he had finally lost his mind. He stood at the edge of the property with the deed trembling in his weathered hands. 15 acres of nothing, not a single tree, not a blade of grass, just cracked dirt and rocks stretching out under the merciless sun. The real estate agent had called it available land. The locals called it the dead zone. Nothing had grown there in over 40 years. 3 different owners had tried and failed to cultivate it. The last one went bankrupt trying. Harold's daughter Sandra visited him that evening. She sat across from him at his small kitchen table with her arms crossed and her face tight with frustration. She did not yell, she did not shout. She just stared at him with disappointment heavy in her eyes. She told him he had thrown away everything. The money was supposed to be for his care, for his future, for emergencies. Instead, he bought a graveyard of dirt that nobody wanted. She asked him what he was thinking. Harold said nothing. He just looked out the window toward the horizon where his new property waited. His son Michael called the next morning. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. Michael's voice was cold and distant. He said their father was being selfish. He said this was proof that Harold could not be trusted to make his own decisions anymore. He said maybe it was time to talk about other living arrangements. Harold hung up before Michael finished his sentence. He sat in silence for a long time after that. The house felt emptier than it ever had before. The neighbors were no kinder. Mrs. Patterson from next door made sure to mention it loudly to anyone who would listen. She stood on her porch and declared that poor old Harold had finally cracked. Mr. Chen from across the street just shook his head whenever Harold walked by. The younger families whispered and pointed. Some laughed openly. Harold heard it all. He saw their smirks and their pitying glances. He kept walking. He had work to do. He started going to the land every single day. He would arrive just after dawn with a thermos of coffee and a folding chair. He did not bring tools. He did not bring seeds. He just sat there and watched the way the morning light hit the cracked surface, watched how the wind moved across the barren expanse, watched the patterns in the dirt and the way shadows shifted throughout the day. People driving past would slow down to stare at the crazy old man sitting alone in the wasteland. Harold did not care. He was looking for something. He did not know what yet, but he knew it was there. 3 weeks passed like this. Then one morning, Harold noticed something strange. There was a section near the eastern corner where the ground looked different. The cracks formed an almost perfect rectangle. It was subtle, easy to miss, but once he saw it, he could not unsee it. He walked over slowly and knelt down despite the protest in his knees. He brushed away loose dirt with his hand. The ground felt different here, harder, more compact, like something underneath was pressing upward. He went home and returned with a shovel. His body was not what it used to be. Each thrust of the blade into the earth sent pain shooting through his back. Sweat poured down his face and soaked through his shirt, but he kept digging, one shovel full at a time. The sun climbed higher and beat down on him without mercy. His hands began to blister. His arms screamed for rest. He ignored everything and kept going. By midday, he had dug down nearly 3 feet. That's when the shovel hit something solid with a metallic clang that echoed across the empty land. Harold's heart began to race. He dropped to his knees and used his hands to clear away the remaining dirt. Metal, rusted and old, but definitely metal. He traced the edges with his fingers. It was a box, large and rectangular, maybe 4 feet long and 2 feet wide. Heavy, very heavy. He tried to lift it but could not budge it even an inch. He sat back, breathing hard and staring at his discovery. What was a metal box doing buried 3 feet under worthless wasteland? He went back to town and bought a heavy-duty chain and borrowed a winch system from a hardware store owner who asked too many questions. Harold gave vague answers and left quickly. By the time he returned to the site, it was late afternoon. He worked carefully to wrap the chain around the box and secure it properly. The winch groaned and protested as he slowly cranked the handle. The box shifted. Dirt cascaded off its surface. Inch by painful inch it rose from its buried tomb. When it finally emerged completely, Harold had to sit down. His entire body shook from exhaustion. The box was covered in layers of rust and grime. There was no visible lock, just a heavy latch that had corroded into place over the years. Harold tried to open it, but his trembling hands lacked the strength. He needed tools. He needed rest. He needed to come back tomorrow. But he could not leave it there. Not overnight. Not where someone might see it. He used every bit of remaining strength to drag and push and roll the box toward a small depression in the land. He covered it with his tarp and piled rocks around the edges to hold it down. Then he drove home in a daze. That night he barely slept. His mind raced with possibilities. What could be in the box? Why was it buried on that specific land? Who put it there and when? The questions multiplied endlessly. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that rusted metal surface. He thought about calling Sandra or Michael. But what would he say? That he found a box? They would think it was more proof of his delusion. No. He had to open it first. He had to know what was inside. He returned before sunrise with a toolbox full of equipment, pry bars, hammers, a hacksaw, a can of lubricant. He worked on the latch for over an hour, spraying, tapping, prying gently so as not to damage whatever might be inside. The metal fought him every step of the way. Then, suddenly, with a sharp crack, the latch gave way. Harold froze. His hands hovered over the lid. This was the moment. Everything came down to what happened next. He lifted the lid slowly. It opened with a grinding screech that made his teeth hurt. Inside the box was filled nearly to the brim with something wrapped in old rotted canvas. Harold carefully peeled back the layers. His breath caught in his throat. Gold coins. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. They gleamed even in the early morning light, despite decades of darkness. Each one was heavy and solid and real. Harold's hands shook as he picked one up. It had markings and dates he did not recognize. Old. Very old. He dug deeper into the box. More coins, different sizes, different markings, all gold. Harold sat back hard on the ground. His vision blurred with tears. He did not remember starting to cry. This was impossible. This could not be real. But it was. It was right there in his hands, real and solid and undeniable. The Wasteland. Everyone mocked him for buying had been hiding a fortune. An actual fortune. Buried and forgotten and waiting for someone stubborn enough or crazy enough to look. He carefully closed the box and secured it as best he could. He covered it again with the tarp and added more rocks. Then he sat there for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. His mind went to Sandra and Michael, to Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Chen, to every person who laughed and whispered, and pitied him. They had no idea. None of them had any idea. Harold knew he needed help, professional help. He could not handle this alone. He drove into the city and found a reputable coin dealer who specialized in historical currency. The man's name was Edward Reeves. He had been in business for 30 years and had a reputation for discretion. Harold brought only 3 coins with him. He placed them on the counter without a word. Edward picked up the first coin, and his entire demeanor changed. His casual friendliness vanished. He pulled out a magnifying glass and examined each coin with intense focus. He weighed them, measured them, checked reference books. When he finally looked up at Harold, his expression was one of shock. These coins were authenticated rarities from the mid-1800s. Each one was worth thousands individually. Edward asked where Harold found them. Harold simply said they were inherited family items. Edward did not press. He made an offer to purchase the 3 coins right then for $45,000. Harold declined. He thanked Edward for his time and left with the coins safely back in his pocket. If 3 coins were worth that much, then the entire box represented wealth beyond anything Harold had ever imagined. Over the next week, Harold made careful plans. He contacted a specialized security company that dealt with high-value transport. He hired a lawyer who specialized in asset protection. He arranged for proper storage and authentication of the entire collection. Every step was deliberate and documented. When the security team finally excavated and transported the box under Harold's supervision, the professional guards could barely hide their amazement at the contents. The full authentication took 3 weeks. Expert after expert examined the collection. The final count was staggering: 2,347 gold coins, dating from 1840 to 1870, mintage marks from discontinued facilities, rare commemorative pieces, error coins that should not exist. The total estimated value exceeded $12 million. $12 million. Harold sat in the lawyer's office and stared at the paperwork that confirmed it. He was a multimillionaire. At 73 years old. From a wasteland everyone mocked him for buying. Harold did not rush into anything. He took his time. He worked with financial advisors to properly structure and invest the majority of the funds. He set up trusts and safeguards. He made sure everything was legal and protected. Only then did he reach out to his family. Sandra came to his house on a Thursday afternoon. She walked in expecting the usual small kitchen and worn furniture. Instead, she found Harold sitting calmly with a folder of documents in front of him. He slid the folder across the table to her without speaking. She opened it, confused. Then she read. Her face went pale. Her hands started shaking. She looked up at Harold with eyes full of questions and disbelief. Michael arrived an hour later. Sandra had called him in tears. When Harold showed him the same documents, Michael actually laughed. Not from humor, from the sheer absurdity of it. He kept saying it was not possible. Harold just nodded and showed him the authentication certificates, the bank statements, the security company receipts, all of it real, all of it documented, all of it because Harold bought a wasteland nobody else wanted. The family dynamic shifted completely. Sandra apologized through tears for doubting him. Michael sat in stunned silence for almost an hour. Harold accepted their reactions with quiet grace. He did not gloat. He did not lecture. He simply explained that sometimes you have to trust yourself even when everyone else thinks you are wrong. Sometimes the things that look worthless hold the greatest value. You just have to be willing to look. Word spread through the neighborhood slowly at first, then all at once. Mrs. Patterson showed up at Harold's door with a cake she baked specially for him. Mr. Chen came by to congratulate him and apologize for, the head shaking. The younger families suddenly wanted to know his secret to success. Harold remained polite but distant. He had not forgotten how they treated him, how they looked at him, how they talked about him when they thought he could. Not here. The question everyone asked was, how did he know? How did he know to buy that specific land? Harold's answer was always the same. He did not know. He just felt something. Call it intuition, call it luck, call it whatever you want. He saw that land and something told him it mattered. Something told him to look closer. So he did. That was the whole secret. He paid attention when everyone else looked away. Researchers eventually discovered the history behind the buried treasure. The land had once been owned by a merchant family during the gold rush era. The patriarch supposedly hid portions of his wealth to protect it from thieves and economic collapse. He died suddenly before revealing the location to his heirs. The family searched for years, but eventually gave up and sold the land. Over time, the story became legend, then myth, then forgotten completely, until an elderly man with nothing to lose decided to buy dirt that nobody wanted. Harold used his wealth carefully. He paid off Sandra's mortgage and set up education funds for his grandchildren. He gave Michael the capital to start the business he had always dreamed about. He donated significant amounts to programs that supported elderly community members who had been marginalized or dismissed. He renovated his small house but did not move. He bought a newer vehicle but nothing flashy. He lived comfortably but not extravagantly. The money gave him security and options, but it did not change who he was. The Wasteland itself became something of a local landmark. Harold kept ownership of it. He had the metal box excavation site preserved and documented. He commissioned a historical marker explaining the property's significance. School groups and history enthusiasts began visiting. The dead zone that everyone mocked became a destination. A reminder that things are not always what they appear to be, that value exists in unexpected places, that patience and persistence matter. Harold spent his remaining years in contentment, not because of the money, because he proved something to himself. He proved that his instincts were valid, that his choices mattered, that he could trust himself even when the entire world disagreed. The treasure was extraordinary, but the real victory was simpler. He refused to let other people's opinions define his reality. He chose his own path and followed it despite the cost, and that choice changed everything. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.